Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everyone. I am so excited to introduce today's guest, Marion Spears Karr. Marion is the Managing Director for Healthcare and Life Sciences for Comar Partners, an international executive search firm. With over 30 years of experience in healthcare executive recruiting and talent acquisition, set of skills in leading successful recruitment teams that specialize in nursing leadership, C-level, vice president, and senior director level searches, along with physician executives. He has developed a deep understanding of the complex challenges facing healthcare organizations today and focuses his work on helping them build leadership teams that are aligned and mission-centered. Prior to joining Comar Partners, Marion served as vice president of Tyler & Company, the executive search branch of Jackson Healthcare. Before Tyler & Company, Marion served as president of Avery Executive Search, a subsidiary of Avery Partners. In 1999, Marion founded ExecQuest, a boutique retained executive search firm with a unique value proposition of building strong leadership teams in healthcare and devising plans to ensure long-term success for his clients and their personnel. ExecQuest was acquired through private equity by Avery Partners in 2011. In addition to search, Marion participates in motivational speaking, leadership coaching, individual team development for a vast array of audiences. He is the developer of the accomplishment culture coaching model for team and individual leadership growth, which is founded on positive psychology thought, such as Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's flow theory, Elias Porter's relationship awareness theory, the work of Michael Maccabee on strategic intelligence, along with other influences and his own work over the last 30 years. Having suffered a traumatic brain injury years ago, Marion is also involved with several organizations that support brain injury research and recovery programs. He holds a Bachelor of Business Administration from Campbell University and a Master of Arts in Executive Leadership from Liberty University. Please join me in welcoming Marion Spears Karr. Welcome, Marion.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Tammy. Thank you for having me.
I am so happy to have you here. And tell us, where are you speaking to us from? I know you live in the mountains
of Georgia. Yeah, I live in the mountains of Georgia. Yeah, I live in the mountains of Georgia, about an hour and a half north of Atlanta proper, and about an hour south of Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay.
So, up basically a community that no one's ever heard of, but it's an awesome area.
Well, I know that you have roots in the Appalachian Mountains, so I was going to almost get that mixed up, which mountains you lived in now. But as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we love to learn about your younger years, your formative years, and take us back there a little bit and tell us about how some of those years, some of the people in your life have influenced you in terms of where you are today, or maybe not, but we always love hearing about where people started.
Yeah, that's, you and I talked about it beforehand, and kind of an interesting journey that I've been on, but I've been blessed. I grew up in a community called Concord, North Carolina, which is in the Piedmont, the rolling hills, the foothills of the mountains of North Carolina, in a blue-collar family, textile mill family that had their roots, as you mentioned, in the Appalachian region of the and mountains. And I live on the beginning of the Appalachian Range in Georgia. Yeah, this is the beginning of it. But Yeah, so I grew up in a blue collar family, um, who almost everyone in the family worked in the textile business, particularly had a mill job with Cannon Mills, the towel manufacturer and sheet manufacturer. Um, Very large family that always seemed to be together.
Mhm.
Um, and So, from an influence perspective, there's a perspective, just that hardworking, down to earth people who just live their life with their faith and with their family. And um, my grandmother lived with us. She was a Southern storyteller, so I was very much influenced by her ability to capture a moment and tell stories from a very early age. I got
Mhm.
exposed to that, so that became kind of who I was. My father was an interloper, if you will. He was from the Midwest, in also a very large agricultural family, but was in the military as a meteorologist in the Air Force after serving in World War II in the Army. And my dad met my mother, and then she was from the South, obviously from North Carolina, and married her and stayed. And so my dad always kind of was considered a little bit outsider, but so my dad worked for part time for the National Weather Service, and but also worked in the mill. And he was an influence of mine because my dad had his amazing attention to detail,
Mm.
and because of his work in weather. And why how that became influence to me, I'm not very detail oriented, but I when I need to be that way, I can kind of rely on that in my DNA. So that's kind of where I started. My mother was very interesting lady as well, who at 18 years old, because of World War II, became a supervisor in the supply room at the mill because all of the men had gone to serve. And at the time, that was unheard of.
Yeah.
So my mother was in lower level kind of blue collar management her entire career and actually held the same job for 45 years.
Wow.
Yeah, walked to work every day. We lived a block from the plant. So my background is really this, hard work, do it every day,
Rock
kind of,
solid, huh?
yeah, rock solid, I think, kind of that's the American story in some way.
I also know because with many of my guests, I do a pre-interview chat, and I was also very struck by sort of the place I think your family had a little bit in the community. At least you did share with me that your grandmother was a great storyteller, and that Sunday afternoons people would gather at your house to listen to her tell stories. And I just thought, wow, I mean, you grew up, you were one of six kids. I mean, you had a big enough family already, and then your family welcomed all these other people in to listen to your grandmother tell stories. I mean, just what a rich environment.
Yeah, it was amazing. Our house was only 6 rooms and one really big kitchen with a table in the middle that sat 12 people. And on Sunday afternoons in the wintertime, everybody was inside. In the summer, obviously, they were outside. But just people would start showing up around 2 o'clock. And this lasted from usually 2 to 5 on Sundays. And neighbors would walk over and bring their lawn chairs, and everyone would tell a story, but my grandmother was kind of the center of the
Uh-huh.
circle. She was born in 1901, so we got to see the 20th century, and she passed away in 1992. We got to see the 20th century through her eyes, which was
Wow.
really interesting.
Wow. And would you so and I know in my experience of having had many conversations with you is you have a bit of a storyteller in you too, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I love the art of painting a picture,
Yeah.
but more importantly, for me, storytelling is the way that I communicate. It
Yeah.
is it's my go-to, if you will.
Yeah, I could imagine it serves you very well in the work that you do too, when you're talking to candidates or presenting a candidate to a client, when you're telling the story of a candidate even, or in that style, it paints a wonderful picture of who this person is and how they might add value to an organization.
Yeah, I think, and that's a piece that's really valuable. You're right; it's very valuable. And why is that so important? Is because I think when we first look at a candidate or a client or whatever, we're looking at what's on paper. The how big the company is, what the revenue is, who they serve, what their products, what their services. But ultimately, people hire people then
Yeah.
and they need to know their story, and I think that's really really important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So so take us forward from there. I mean, you grew up in this family life where people worked hard. They went to work every day. It was sounds so rock solid. And then you went off to school.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I was always, I joke about my dad being an outlier, but in some ways I probably was that way as well. In the traditional family that I grew up in, the sports that you played were, the traditional American sports, baseball and football primarily. In the hometown that I lived in, that reigned. That was the big deal. But I, at a very early age, fell in love with skateboards,
Oh,
and that was
really?
it's in the 70s, and um, completely was all in on skateboarding. And through skateboarding, I also got exposed to bicycle racing, which is completely weird. That story, that's a weird story. That's a long story, but a bicycle for me was freedom. It got me around town. Like I didn't, my parents were going to drive me around. This was the 70s. If I wanted to go somewhere, it was on a bicycle. So I fell in love with obviously the utility nature of a bicycle very early. And but I would ride miles and miles and miles every day on my bicycle with my skateboard to go skateboard places.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a long story, but I ended up riding my bicycle to a bicycle shop 30 miles away from my home to buy another skateboard. I'd saved my money from work that I was doing. And when I got to the bicycle shop, this was in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was south of the town I grew up in. And the bicycle shop owner was just blown away by the fact that some 13-year-old kid had ridden a bicycle from Concord to buy a skateboard. And yeah, and they, I don't, many people don't know it, but Charlotte, North Carolina was kind of an early hotbed for European style cycling in the United States.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons behind it, but it was mainly because of two bicycle shops that were there that were promoting bicycle racing as a sport. Anyway, long story short, I became through that encounter started getting involved in European style cycling, bicycle racing, and
At 13.
yeah, 14 years old. And by the time I was 15, I was completely all in on the sport, and talked my parents into letting me go to England if we could figure out how to pay for it. And so I became an exchange student, went to England, and spent a pretty good bit of time over there my junior year, before coming back home and graduating high school. So I fell in love with cycling, and well, how does that relate to the work that we do and the work that I do? That was all. I was all in on that. That was just, and it opened up the door for meeting people outside of my circle, my culture. Right? I started meeting people from Europe. I started meeting people from New York. I started meeting people from big cities, which up until that point I never had that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, at least the way you were painting the picture of your earlier life, it sounds like you lived a relatively kind of cozy, small town existence your parents worked hard. You had your grandmother at home, and didn't sound like you went too many other places. And so somehow this European racing bug bit you somehow. And I'm curious, did you have any friends who were into this as well? Or was this kind of like a very singular thing that you just glommed onto? It just sounds, I think you're right when you said, well, I'm a little bit like my dad in this way. Like I just kind of found my way into this.
Yeah, no, it was direct result of me going to the bike shop. Turns out I got to be really good friends with the owner of the bike shop's son, who was 2 years older than me, and who also was into skateboards. His name's Bobby, and Bobby was already racing. And again, it was that, wow, you really can ride really well. You should try racing. And we started skateboarding together. We started training together. We also
it's 30 miles from you, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but but it was weird because I found out his dad's bike shop was 30 miles away, but they lived in my town.
Oh, you're kidding?
We actually ended up, no, it was really crazy. I would have never met him, most likely. We ended up going to the same high school, and it was really crazy. It was like a crazy story, but Bobby was into that, and so I was into it, and it was just it was, in some ways for me, it was like, okay, this is my ticket out.
Oh, so you were, it occurred to you that it might be a good idea to do something else?
Yeah, do something different. I was a good student because my parents spent a lot of time with me on being a good student. All my brothers and sisters are very, very smart people.
Yeah.
They didn't have the opportunities. They were much older than I was. Didn't have the opportunities to go to college. Didn't have some of the opportunities. I was the last in the line. So I had the benefit of being the youngest, and I had the benefit of coming, born in the 62 as opposed to in the 50s. My older brothers were born in the late 40s. So I had the benefit of that, and I knew I was going to go to college, or I knew if I could get a scholarship, I could go to college, and I did. And so it was all just kind of serendipity. There were so many different moving parts that I got these opportunities, and I was fortunate enough to try to make the best of them.
Yeah. So in some ways, you were attracted to some of these things that were different from what a lot of other kids, were doing in town. And it sounds like your family was also very supportive of you pursuing these interests to some degree, as long as you could find the resources to make them happen.
Yeah, in some ways, my dad was perplexed. He thought there's a movie that was really popular in the 70s, late 70s, called Breaking Away.
Yeah.
You remember? So in the movie, the father there lost his mind when he saw his son shaving his legs in the bathroom. And my dad unfortunately didn't have that scenario with me. But and if people have not seen that movie, you should see it. It's a great movie about European cycling and about blue collar culture in Indiana, which Rob related to. But my dad was pretty perplexed. My mother was a little bit perplexed by it, but they were very supportive, and it was, for them, the rules were this. If you could figure out a way to pay for it and you made great grades, you could pretty much do what you wanted.
Yeah.
As long as you showed up at church every week, as long as you showed up at church every week, as long as you did your chores. But if you made great grades and you could figure out a way to pay for it, and there was one other piece of the whole thing that was amazing for me, and one of my other biggest influences in terms of support, a support network, is I was also involved in scouting, Boy Scouting. And my scoutmaster is one of my biggest influence. He passed away just a couple years ago. A gentleman named Wiley Newton, and Wiley he was worldly. He had was retired military, had been all over the world, understood cultures, served in Vietnam for 6 tours, had taught in universities. He taught at Campbell University, where I ended up getting a scholarship and going to undergraduate. That's why I went there, because of him.
Mm-hmm.
He was just so, he provided a different perspective than my mom and dad, in some ways, than my mom and dad. And scouting was also a big part. So there's all this combination of things that seemed like separate pieces, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they all came together to be supportive of taking risk and being a leader. And so yeah, that's really kind of where the whole story started.
Yeah. I mean, I'm wondering, when you were that young, did you ever sort of stop and say, hey, I'm really different from a lot of the other kids at school, or is this okay? Or did you just say, you know what, this is what I want to do?
I wish I could say I was so brave that I just accepted that I was different, and had a kind of a different. Fortunately, I had that small circle of Bobby and a couple other people, but we were outcast in that town.
Oh,
I
really?
had kind of a double whammy. I was from the poor side, the blue collar mill side of the town. And what's interesting though, there were so many kids in upper middle class and others there that also became friends of mine and were supportive. But it was a little bit of a challenge. So there were times where I questioned, like, why am I not playing football? Why am I not playing baseball like everyone else?
Yeah.
Or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I kind of just, because I had that circle of friends we really just wanted to be our own people, and that's where really I think the influence of, I know this, we're all over the place on this story,
That's
but
fine.
where the influence of 70s skateboarding made a major impact in my life as well, because those guys in California that said, we're not going to be the status quo. We're not going to be like everybody else. They
Uh,
made it cool to be different.
uh,
And the magazines just, they're like, oh my gosh, that's what we want to be. And
uh-huh.
so it was this kind of odd combination of
Yeah.
things. But the underlying piece of the whole thing is that the thing I thank my parents for the most is them sharing their faith with me. And the second thing is holding me accountable for my education. Without that, all that free cycling and bicycle stuff and
Yeah.
skateboards and all that would have not been possible.
Sure.
So anyway,
Now, I am curious, how did you pay for all that stuff?
it was a great question. I would work multiple jobs
Yeah.
when I went in, and at 15 in North Carolina in the 70s, you could work in the mill part time, in the cotton mill part
Ah,
time. Yeah, so I would go down and work a few hours in the evening in the mill,
ah,
or I would mow grass or run errands for people, or all those different things. And then by the time I was 15, I started picking up sponsors in both skateboarding, and they didn't give me a lot of money, but what
yeah.
they gave me my equipment. And
Ah,
uh, and in cycling, I got on a team that was sponsored, and we got bicycles I was riding bicycles I could have never afforded on my
yeah.
own.
I was wondering, yeah.
Yeah. And it was a lot of different things like that. And then I learned pretty early, if you had good grades, um, you could apply for, like my exchange program was totally a scholarship.
Mm,
And, that I competed for and won. And so that it was a combination of things. And then of course my parents helped where they could. And,
Yeah.
um, and I didn't, you know what else? One of the other things, Tammy, is I
What?
didn't fall in the trap of a teenager who needed to go buy a car.
Aha. Yeah.
I never bought a car.
Mm-hmm.
I never owned a car till I graduated college.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So, so I, when my friends were all working at McDonald's or the mill or whatever to buy a car, I was saving my money or buying bicycles and skateboards.
Right, right.
So anyway, that was a little bit different.
So you just had a different set of wheels, that's all.
A different set of wheels. Yeah, a different set of wheels.
And you didn't need gas money.
No, didn't need gas money. I didn't need gas money.
And in the 70s, that meant a lot, actually.
It meant a lot. I mean, of course, I was the kid that everybody saw on a bicycle everywhere, like literally everywhere. So, or skateboard or some combination.
Wow. So when you went, you went to England and you spent your junior year there. That must have been transformative for you.
It was amazing. I had two incredible sets of host parents. I was part of a great group of people. I got to learn really quickly how to take care of myself because all of my travel around England was pretty much, except when we would go for bicycle stuff and that kind of thing, was on my own.
Wow.
And I learned how to use public transportation, which I'd never been exposed to. I learned how to read train schedules. I learned how to one of the things I think was really helpful is I learned to manage my Southern accent. I have obviously, as you can tell, I have a very regional accent, even to this day. But I was able to learn how to communicate with people who initially may not understand me completely. And there was a lot of different components. And then my mother wanted me to graduate high school at my high school. So I obviously came back home, and what the plan is to go back and try to go to Europe every summer and go to college in the United States and try to be a professional bicycle racer. And so I finished a few months at my high school. And then the week I graduated high school, it was on a Monday. On the Thursday, I was training for a bicycle race in Charlotte. Matter of fact, the race was going to be in Charlotte. It was going to be a local race. And I got hit by a car and had a brain injury, traumatic brain injury. And I was 18 years old. I was months away from going to college and on an academic scholarship. And next thing you know, I'm in a trauma unit in Charlotte.
Wow.
And that was pretty much the end of my cycling career at a very young age, road cycling career. I tried to come back while I was in college. It just didn't have it. I just didn't have the training capacity or so my life went a different direction. And so, but anyway, that's, but I, obviously we made it through rehab. We made it through all that. And I had to struggle, learn how to study differently. I had memory challenges, but at Campbell, they were so helpful and just so supportive. And I was able to finish my undergraduate there fairly quickly. I actually finished in less than 4 years.
Wow.
And again, go back to being in the right place at the right time. I had the opportunity to do a lot of advanced placement in the high school I was in. So I was ahead. So, and I got married while I was in college, and and then when I graduated, we decided that my wife was going to go back and finish her nursing degree and her master's in nursing. She had taken a break while we were in college, and I went to back. You'll appreciate this, Tammy. The thing I was trying to run away from, which was the textile industry.
Right.
I went back to work in it and in the management program. Yeah, I went back to Cannon Mills and joined them in 1984 in their management training program.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it was a tough 6 roads in the textile business. It was not what I wanted to do, but I did it because it was the right thing to do for my family at the time.
Right. Well, and I can imagine after, the trauma that you had been through, even though you had made it through school and everything, I can only imagine that you were probably looking at your life differently and you were making choices very differently.
Yeah, it was I was very, very fortunate with the injury in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, it changed. I went from feeling immortal like most teenagers and to being very mortal and being very realizing, whoa, there's more to this than just going for everything.
Yeah.
So and I struggled in my performance as a leader. I did really well at times, and then at times I just was not a good fit for that business. But I made it through because of my sense of commitment and was instilled in me. Like when you start something, you got to finish it. That was my dad's philosophy.
That part you didn't forget with the brain injury.
No, I didn't forget that.
That was ingrained in there, huh?
Yeah, that was DNA. That was absolutely my DNA. That was my dad loved the word perseverance. He thrived on it. It was almost his badge of honor, I think.
Yeah. So you did the management training program at the mill, and how long did you stay there for?
So I was at Cannon for 2 years. Moved up really quickly. Was managing at age 23, managing a whole department of sewing sheets and pillowcases for Cannon Mills. Got recruited away to go to work for a company called William T. Burnett, which was a small fiber subsidiary, because the plant manager who was at Cannon left to go there and really liked my work ethic and recruited me to there. I was with Burnett for a short period of time. Then he went to J.P. Stevens, one of the largest textile companies in the world, and took me with him. I went to J.P. Stevens, and then we merged with West Point Pepperell. And became this company called West Point Stevens. And during that time period, this is from 86 to 91, I got moved 4 times.
Oh, wow.
My wife and I had our first child, and we're hoping to have another. And I ended up in 91 just becoming completely disillusioned with the industry, how we were treating people, where the industry was going overseas. Lives were, I grew up in people whose lives centered around the mill, and now those jobs no longer existed.
Yeah.
And so being the smart 26-year-old I was at the time, I quit my job and moved my family back to North Carolina without having a job. And that was really brilliant move. It was dumb. And anyway, got back to North Carolina, back to my hometown area where my family was, and our circle and my wife's family, and our circle of support. And a friend of mine, again, connections to other people make your life sometimes happen.
Yeah.
A friend of mine had left the textile industry about the same time I did, and had bought a management recruiter franchise and got into the recruiting business. And invited me to come. I went to see him with my resume to try to find a job, and he just started laughing, and he was like, we don't have any clients. I can't place you. But he showed me a video of your career with management recruiters. And at the time, management recruiters was the McDonald's franchise of recruiting. They were selling franchises all over the country. And I thought, well, I could do this. I could start recruiting and do that. until I found a job, and that was in 1991, August of 1991. Matter of fact, there's always these things that happen in August for some reason. But August of 1991, and I picked healthcare because of my wife at the time, and because of jobs opportunities and stuff. And we just started, and we just, again, where the perseverance kicked in, where the ability just to have an incredible capacity for work, and we just busted it. Like, we just worked so hard to try to launch this thing. That's how I ended up in executive search. That led me to landing a search for a nursing management position, which I ended up filling. Several other jobs that I didn't get successful, but it just that first year was just this kind of grinding mentality. And that led me to building relationships with healthcare leaders and starting in the business. And then by 1994, we took off. We had hospital clients all over the country. We were just blessed. And but unfortunately, my wife got diagnosed with cancer, and I had a client that I was doing a lot of work for, but I couldn't balance trying to help. And we had our second child. I couldn't balance like all the time I was spending on him on a contingency basis where I wasn't getting paid, right? Unless and taking care of her and my kids and that kind of thing. So I'd heard about retained search, and I just made the comment, hey, why don't you put me on retainer? I'm doing so much work for you. Why don't you just pay me a retainer? And he did. And that's how in 94, my career shifted.
Wow.
Because I asked a question, and they said yes. And from that moment on, I did retained search work. Unfortunately, I lost my wife in 95 to cancer.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but no, thank you. But again, it's part of the whole journey. And then so through that, kept building the business. And in 99, decided to start my own firm and called ExecQuest, because I saw some niches in the market that weren't being met. But it all started with, I think, ultimately, it all started with just having these little micro successes of, trying something and it worked. Let me just be clear, though. Everything I've tried has not worked. I've joked, and I stole this from somebody else, but I believed it applied to me. I believe failure is my superpower. And someone else said that one time, and I went, I'm going to join that bandwagon. Failure, a lot of failure. And but learning from failure, you don't always learn from every failure, but you learn from most of the failures that matter.
Yeah.
Just that keep going and keep grinding was what happened, what got me to where I wanted to be. And then when I started ExecQuest in 99, started from scratch, started all over again, and then built that firm up. And then in 2011, sold it to Avery Partners. But it all started with this, being not afraid of taking, I don't say risk, but maybe I'm using that word too much, but just trying new things.
So I'm curious, actually, you said, sometimes you learned from failures and sometimes you didn't. Can you distinguish what the difference was between the nature of the failures that where you did learn something versus the failures where you didn't?
Yeah, I think so. The easy answer is the one that you didn't. You don't learn from failures if you repeat those failures multiple times. Right.
Right.
Now, eventually you learn from them, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why I think people go, I learned from all my failures. Like, well, have you ever repeated one of those? And the answer is most likely yes, and most likely you didn't learn from it the first time, then, or the second time. So that's on the failures that I learned from, or not all of them were these big catastrophic ones. I mean,
Right.
sometimes there were some major ones, but simple ones. Like, I'll give you an example. In the world of executive recruiting, one of the biggest failures that an executive search or recruiter can make is to not clarify and discuss with candidates how important the geographic area of where the job that they're looking at is. In other words, what's the connection to the area? What's, and it's not just it's a great job, but, what's going to be the anchor that's going to sustain you if you're going to move from Seattle to Chicago,
Yeah.
right? And maybe it is just the career move. But one of the things, if you gloss over that, and you'll miss something. And the one I remember the most was a gentleman who I was actually moving from Indiana to North Carolina. It was a great promotion, absolutely going to be an amazing promotion from where he was to the hospital that he was going to go to. It was a chief financial officer role. It was a real high profile search because of the work that we were doing for that firm and what their needs were, or that hospital needs were. I failed to find out where his mother-in-law lived.
You say you failed to find out. Now, why would
I failed to find out? Yeah, why you think? Well, why did I not ask that question? Well, he had talked about in his wife and their children, and how his mother-in-law helped with the daycare, so he and his wife could work. And I didn't follow up on that and realize that she lived literally next door to them in Indiana. Now that sounds, well, how does that apply to the situation? She wasn't moving to North Carolina. His whole circle of support for he and his wife.
Okay.
Right. And I missed it. And so he accepted the job. He said his wife was on board. Everything was good. A week before he was supposed to start, he called me and said, we can't move because we have this issue with finding appropriate daycare, and my mother-in-law will not move to North Carolina.
Well, I get that. I just wonder why that's your failure and not his,
Right. Yeah, great question. And you're right. There is some failure on his part. But what it taught me was to make sure that I talk about with candidates once they open the door for me to do so.
Yeah, they have to tell you that they have children, right? Because
exactly. No, I don't ask it. Yeah, I don't ask it. But when they share it,
yeah,
and I have to make sure that I spend enough time, and I still not 100%, but understand what as a family unit they need.
Yeah.
Beyond what the job is. And that's where maybe failure is too strong of a word, but in some ways it taught me attention to detail.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to my dad's attention to detail.
Yeah.
So anyway.
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's a certain kind of a, it's a bit of an oversight, and yet it's complicated in your business because there are certain parameters you can't touch unless they open the door, as you said. So,
exactly.
So I understand what you're saying. And I can see where I think you're right, though. I think it's sort of on both sides of that conversation where, and this is important for the audience to hear this, because I think sometimes when people are so anxious to take that job offer or make that change, they'll say yes to something, not really thinking about some of the implications or consequences of their decision, or they're not looking at all the parameters. And, you can't be a mind reader. You can't figure everything out for them. That they're grown-ups. So right. So,
right.
You figure that they've figured some of those things out. You can't do all their thinking for them. But at the same time, given the nature of the business you're in, and you've put all this time into doing this search and getting this candidate all lined up, for them to then pull out at the last minute, that's been almost a big waste of your time. And, that's problematic too.
Yeah, it's more of a waste of the time of the client and also the candidate. And so
Yeah.
one of the things that's so important for me now is to ask those kind of questions
Yeah.
without crossing the line. I mean,
Right.
like I would say to you, Tammy, is there anyone impacted by you? Who else is impacted by you deciding to go to Chicago?
Mm.
That's a fair question,
Yeah. Yes.
right? And it's a fair question.
Yeah. No, I think this is really important information. I think it's rare also when people are looking to make certain transitions. They don't always get this kind of information about how people who do these kinds of searches or recruiters, they don't always get this information. So this is kind of a bonus for people to hear this. I really appreciate that. So you sold your company, then you went and you worked for
The company that bought me out. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And this work though has suited you in general. You've stayed with the in the healthcare arena in the executive search field for a long time now, right?
Yeah, 31 years as of this year. I started in 91.
And then you also expanded your repertoire into studying leadership and positive psychology and blending in a number of other disciplines into that. When did that come up, and when did you start doing speaking and coaching and all of those things? How did that fold it into that?
Yeah, a two-parter. One, my understanding the psychology of how people present themselves and how they talk about value and accomplishment goes all the way back to 93. When I landed, it didn't become a thing till after 2000, but it started in 93 when I landed a search for a chief operating officer for a hospital in Chicago. And I went to visit with the CEO, and he was late for the meeting. I was young in my career. I didn't really know what to do. He showed up and told me I only had 15 minutes. I'd driven from North Carolina because I couldn't catch a flight, 14 hours to get to the meeting. I was pretty frazzled. And I asked him, well, why have you not hired anyone? And he said, I can't tell. I've not seen any candidates that can tell me why their hospital was better because they were there. And he and I got into this conversation around what's the difference between your accomplishments and understanding the impact of those accomplishments and talking about why it matters. And of course, we know Simon Sinek went on to write a book about why and you're living your why. But on a very micro level, candidates were not, they would point to their resume or they would look at and assume that if you saw that they had saved their hospital $2 million, that the impact was self-evident, which it's not as a point of reference. So from 93 to 99, I was really interested in that a lot, of getting candidates to present their value. So fast forward, when I started my own company, I was doing work for a healthcare system in North Carolina called Novant, and I'd worked with one big department building there over a 3-year period, over their entire department over this 3 years. We placed multiple people, and the senior vice president who I was working with made the comment, well, Marion, it seems like every time you make a new placement on our team, they're even a better fit than the previous person, even though they were fit culturally. There was this idea that the more experience I had with that particular team, that particular department, that particular group of individuals, my ability to match candidates with them was just elevated every time. And so I became interested in that. I became interested in, okay, what can we do to try to package that or bottle that, right? And so that's when I started learning about DISC assessments or Myers-Briggs or something. I thought, well, maybe we could add some kind of psychosomatic, whatever you call it, the testing to, to the process to, to not be so anecdotal and so gut driven. And that led me to behavioral psychology, and that led me to some other pieces. So around by 2004, what I found is that I was building this knowledge base, if you will, around those topics, and I started offering for free to share that with my existing clients. Hey, I can come do a class on how to map, your value, and that's where the beginnings of development of this thing that you mentioned it's called the accomplishment culture coaching model.
Yeah.
And that's where it started. It started on how to coach my current placements and my current clients on how to achieve accomplishments at a micro and macro level, and how it connects with other people. It was all people centered, and it all goes back to 93. So that just snowballed. People were like, oh, wait a minute, we don't have that. And then around 2006, I got asked to speak on some topic. I can't even remember what the topic was. And I didn't feel qualified to speak on that particular topic, but I said, I've got this other thing that I want to talk about called accomplishment culture. And I got invited to the Emergency Nurses Association annual conference in Nevada. And so that was my first time of really being on stage of any significance.
Wow.
Was 500 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really crazy. It was insane. It was not, and I wish I could say I did an amazing job and got great reviews. No, it was terrible. It was a complete train wreck.
Well,
but that's another
we all
one.
We all need at least one of those.
Yeah. That's another one of the failures I learned from. But that's where it all started. And then most of my coaching had been on the client side.
Sure.
Up to that point. But then it became, oh, wait a minute. Now there are candidates that are not really in my world that I could coach the same way. And so that's how it evolved.
I see. And then you started taking on coaching clients.
Yes.
Wow. Yes. So now what's sort of the general balance of your work today in terms of your work doing searches and recruiting and coaching? Are you, what does that look like today?
Great question. 70% is now mostly executive search work. I joined a new company to start a new branch, Comar Partners, where they're not new, but they're new to me.
Yeah.
And I'm starting the healthcare life science practice. About 20% of my work is revenues and is from the coaching piece and speaking. I include team training within that as well. I this year with the pandemic becoming endemic, there's more opportunities to be in person. So I've already this year have done 3 pretty big training programs for on site with healthcare organizations here in the United States. And then about 10% of it is individual coaching. I'm real selective, unfortunately, on that because I'm not your traditional coach. There's a lot of great coaches out there where I'm very specific in coaching people on how to prepare for their next job opportunity or how to prepare to translate their experience into a different context within their career or position themselves for promotability, which I know there's some other people doing that, but my focus is really helping them tell their story. Ultimately, that's what it is, tell their story.
Yeah. And are the people that you work with in specific industries, or do you work with people across a number of industries?
My circle is typically healthcare life sciences, but I've worked with people in other industries. For example, I got to work with a gentleman in big mortgage clearinghouses, and what his actually was fun. He was fairly young in his management career. His parent actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, my son is trying to grow in the world of big mortgage companies."
Uh-huh.
And I took him on, and he's done incredibly well. We got promoted multiple times since we did the training a few years ago. But yeah, I'm coaching someone right now who is in the life sciences, somewhat healthcare related, but not really my world. And then I've also worked with people in finance. I volunteered. Part of that too. I also volunteered 2008 to 2011 in North Carolina in a big ministry for people who lost their jobs with the downturn of the economy.
Oh, wow.
And I volunteered in that, obviously, and get paid for those. I was doing it on, to support what we were doing.
Yeah.
We had all walks of life in that room.
Oh,
We had executives from banks. We had executives from the NASCAR industry. We had blue collar. We had all kinds.
Yeah.
But mostly it's life sciences, healthcare, because that's my world and that's my circle.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you've helped a lot of people. So if people want to learn more about your work, what's the best way for them to find out about you or reach out to you?
That's the best way to start is connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out to me there. They'll see some of my thought leadership stuff that I put up there. I host a LinkedIn live show that you've been a
it's a great show.
And that's the best way to connect.
And you have a newsletter on LinkedIn too, is that right?
About to launch it. It's not out yet. It's about to launch, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
One later this year. Come More Partners does have a newsletter, but I don't have a personal newsletter.
Oh, okay.
But they can connect with me there, and that's the best place because I live there a lot.
Well, we will definitely have that information in the show notes. So, Marion, I know you're going to have a great answer to this question. So, a lot of people who listen here are thinking about what's next for them and how to get started or just thinking about a context in which to think about how to move on. What would be a key piece of advice you might give somebody who is thinking about a transition or their next steps?
When you told me that question, I got excited. Yes, it's simple, but it's complicated.
Okay.
Is before they decide to look outward into the marketplace, they need to look inward at the skills and capabilities that they own that give them the most satisfaction, the most sense, the biggest sense of accomplishment, that support kind of who they are. And how do we do that? We take the time to create a master capabilities list. Think about all the different capabilities you own, Tammy. You have all these different characteristics. You have all these amazing skills, but there's a set of skills that you prefer. And typically those preferred skills are the ones where you have the highest probability of accomplishment.
Right.
So what I would recommend is anybody that says, "Hey, I'm not really happy at what I'm doing. I'd like to pivot, or I'd like to transition, or I'd like to go to a different," stop focusing outwardly and focus on where do you bring the most value? Think about those, and then create a focus outwardly to see what organizations and what people could use those skills the most.
Right.
That's the first step.
Right. That's great. Well, you'd think I paid you to give me that answer because that is so aligned with work from the inside out. That was about as perfect as it gets. Marion, this has been a joy and a pleasure to have you on here. I appreciate your time and your sharing your story and sharing your family with us too. And I wish you all the best going forward. And thank you for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Tammy.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Marion Spears Karr. It was so interesting to speak with him and learn about his early life, background, and professional transitions. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 196. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my new book, Work from the Inside Out. Break through 9 common obstacles and design a career that fulfills you. It's available in print and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Marion, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? It'd be so helpful if you could write a review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find. Just check out my website, tammygoolerloeb.com/podcast, and then click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help sustain the podcast, as I do self-fund it, by buying me a cup of coffee. Go to buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. I'd appreciate your support. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd really love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.